Hey everybody, I'm Brian and this is Big Lake Little Boat, and today's video is not about fishing, but it is going to be about our boat setup. We've had multiple people reach out asking us what size of boat we have, what rigs do we have, how many downriggers, and this sort of thing. And we're going to break this down part by part about how we set up our small boat for salmon fishing on Lake Michigan. If you don't already know, we fish southern Lake Michigan, basically from Hammond, Indiana, all the way up to New Buffalo. We have one as far as Ludington on the east side and one as far as North Point on the west. So we fish big water with this 16.5-foot boat. So I bought this boat brand new in 2001 for smaller lakes in north central Indiana. And we moved to northwest Indiana and I converted it to a salmon boat. Okay, so you ask me why I have this such a small boat. That's why I bought this directly right out of college, and wasn't my wisest decision at the time, but looking back, it's paid for, it's paid off. I've had this thing paid off forever, and I don't plan on changing it because it works. So this is a 2001 Lund Mr. Pike 16. It is exactly 16.5 feet. So when I first got this boat, I put in the Scotty's rod holders, right, for the smaller lakes. We moved up to northwest Indiana in 2003, October. Didn't start fishing Lake Michigan until the spring of '05. So what you've seen here is basically 20 years of improvements and upgrades that I've made to this boat. I'm going to start with the bow. I'm going to work the port side, the transom, starboard. We're going to go part by part on how we rigged this boat out. So let's get started. So first, I'm going to take you up to the bow. When I first bought the boat, they had it rigged with a 55-pound thrust, 55-inch trolling motor. Okay, and I've had that forever. Well, about 3 years ago, I made the upgrade to a spot lock, and I wanted the spot lock, and I wanted the heading sensor that could keep you on the heading, and that has freed up somebody driving at the helm. So this thing has been incredible. So what I upgraded to was a power drive. This is a 60-inch shaft power drive, and I went all the way up to 70 pounds of thrust. If I have any recommendations for you, always go heavier than what they recommend, okay? So if your boat dealer says, oh, 55 pounds is going to be enough, tell him to go 70. If he thinks the 70 is going to be enough, tell him to go to 80 or 90, okay? Because you're going to need it. And then you'll need that extra shaft if you're coming up and down out of the water. That longer shaft won't come out. So always go a little bit longer. So I've used the ram mount down here to keep it in place, and it fits right down in there, and you lift it up and it goes down. So this does come with a transducer, and the reason I went with the power drive over a Terrova or Altera was because this is a lighter weight. The Terrova had a bigger head on it, and I didn't want to put all that much weight on the boat, so I opted for a power drive. And the functionality has worked the same as if I had a Terrova. So since it came with a transducer, all I had to do was buy this extra cable, and I matched it up with this small little garment up here. And we don't use it that much, only really when perch fishing. I do have it running when we're out trolling, and it'll show fish and bait, and then I'll see it show up in the back of the boat with a few seconds later. So the thing is accurate. I didn't go too expensive on it. I think this was like $105, $110. This is a 24 volt, and I basically have one battery up here, and then I got two batteries back there. But the one back there, I've ran cable all the way up to here, and then I've ran this cable up into here, and then the plug actually is what makes it 24 volts. So I did all the rigging myself here. So when you plug this in, that's when it makes it 24 volts. It's not wired in 24 volts. This is the spot for my camera. I plug my camera cables in here, and then this is where I put my camera mount. Okay, that goes up here. I have tilt trim up here. I have basically an extra prop in here, safety equipment, flares, jumper cables, a tool kit. That's basically everything here in the bow that we have. This is what the iPilot looks like, the remote control. And 99% of what I'm doing is either spot lock, or the north is the heading sensor. So once I get this heading right, I just hit north and pray that it's going to stay straight. And if there's no wind, 99% of the time it will. If there's some wind or chop or rollers, this works about 75% of the time. You got to kind of get it dialed in, and then finally, make sure the sensor goes before you turn your back, because it will have a mind of its own when it's rough. So anyways, I've been happy with this. We use it perch fishing, and I think it works great. I also did mount it on a removable plate. Actually, the plate makes it removable. So all I got to do is cut some zip ties, and the whole trolling motor will slide right out. So I did that by design in case I ever wanted to upgrade, or this thing, if I had ever had issues, then I wouldn't have to sit here and undo the whole thing and bring it out. I just unscrew this, and I do have a lock on it, pop that lock off, and then it slides right out. So that's the bow. Okay, moving to the port side, we have a track system here. This is 24 inches. I started with a little 12-inch track system, okay, which was up here, and which had our tree. This is our tree. I don't have the top tree here. And I had one or two rod holders, and it was too tight. So I ended up upgrading the 24-inch track and moving the 12-inch in the back since I already had it, okay? Okay, so here is the tree put in. It holds 2 rods on the tree. We use this for one of the nets. We have 2 nets. We have a big net for salmon that has a magnet go on it, that has a magnet. And then we also have a rubber net. So sometimes the rubber net sits here, sometimes the big net sits here. So it holds 2. We got a couple Berts here, and these guys were cheap, and this is back when it was basically just Berts and Trax Techs. I have since starting to upgrade with the Rod Boss, which I'm going to do another video on. So I've got 4, 5, 6, so I can run 6 rods right here. Moving on, we have an optional downrigger that we don't use very often on this side. We typically use this corner, just like that. That corner turned in, and then this corner, this side one, starboard one, extended out. So we typically just run 3. Don't rarely ever run this very much at all, but we have it extra just in case. This is where the fish hawk goes. I did all the rigging myself. There's a transducer here. All the power is all the way up to my main power button. I put the grommets in, ran everything. So this is where the fish hawk goes. This is a Rod Boss. They make some excellent, like I said, I'm upgrading the Rod Boss. And this is a nice thing that they use. It's almost like a ram mount. You can kind of move it here. We have a Bert's rod holder here. This is where the bonker goes. And then we also have an extra Rod Boss here that goes up and down that will take this out as we're netting fish, grab that rod and throw it in this to make it even farther out. So this opens up this whole area to net fish. And this is where we net fish. Unless, for some weird reason, we got to come over here. 90% of the time, the fish get netted in this area here. So I also have made some USB ports here with a switch, and that tells me, it also has a voltmeter that tells me what my main battery is at. Because when I go perch fishing, I have my mounting thing for my GoPro that comes up here, and I can keep my Osmo camera charged the whole time. That's why I have this back here. These right here are a Sport Troll Canon downrigger. They're small, and they do swivel. Okay, so they do swivel in and out. And like I said, we run it out in the corner. We use 200-pound Power Pro braid on here. So I've got a bunch of Dacron, maybe 300 or 400 feet of Dacron. Then we put 300 feet of the Power Pro braid. So, and this handles 12-pound balls. And this one happens to be a Unitroll. Back when they had Unitrolls. I think they've all upgraded since, but these things have lasted me for 20 years. So moving on to the starboard side. Like I said, when we run this and we're running 3 downriggers, I'll have this swung in like that. And it does stay out of the motor. And that is why we take the fish over here to net. But we do have the capability of swinging out this downrigger as well in an emergency situation. Or if we're not using this downrigger, we'll use these two, swing them out, and run the 2 and run the whole setup that way. We also have an optional rod holder to put that in. Rod holder here for whatever you may have. So, like I said, if we do run 3 downriggers, this is the downrigger that we normally have, and then this guy is swung in like that. So we do have a marine radio with the 8-foot whip. This is a brand new, not brand new, but it's probably 2 or 3 old standard Horizon. It does have GPS capabilities. It also has emergency, immediate go to channel 16 for the Coast Guard, a distress button that will tell the Coast Guard my location based on GPS coordinates. So we've got the same setup as we did on the port side with the tree and the rod holders. This is an older Garmin unit, but it does show the side view and then the down imaging and then the old school sonar. And it does have a backdrop on maps as well. I don't use that. I use this guy from 2005, this iFinder H2O. So all this is GPS, and then this would be the depth sounder and what's happening below the boat. So that way I can come over here, boom, 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 make waypoints, and this will show us the map. As you can see, there's a base map there. You guys have seen that on the video. It also tells me speed on here, which always matches with the depth sounder. So this depth sounder is ran through an NMEA Anemia 2000. So my Honda 100's computer is also inside here. And I'm trying to get this thing connected. I haven't got it done yet, but it's in the works. I do have the Honda Smart Control here, so I can put it in gear and it'll go up every 50 RPMs, which once you start running all the lines, you don't even use this. I just typically just put it in gear and just play it like this, real nice and easy to whatever speed I need to get it to. Of course, this is all your standard stuff that comes on boats here, as far as the gadgets and things, and the power button. Okay, so working out from the helm, this is kind of wide open here. So we have capability for 4 seats, although we typically just run 3. If I have 3 people, we'll run a seat here, and seat here, which is the pilot seat. And then we'll leave this open for netting and reeling. And so this spot will be open for netting and reeling. If I have a 4th, most of the time, that person can sit here or sit on a gunnel. This, of course, is a live well, which I'm trying to get plugged to keep from leaking. I have I have a ladder down in here and also my PFDs. I did install the nets. That's where kind of the boat bumpers will go. And then, of course, I have my fire extinguisher. And in here, this is just all like weird things, fuses and nuts and bolts. And then all these baggies are all of the user guides and manuals for all of the equipment that I have on board. One thing I want to kind of go back here and talk about is my charging system. Okay, so like I said, I have a battery up here. I have 2 batteries back here. So this engine naturally charges. Okay, so what I thought to myself, how can I utilize that and keep my trolling motor batteries charged as well? So I got with a friend that's pretty good with electricity and running things, and he's a good electrician. He gave me basically some diagrams, and this is a 10 gauge 2 line. So I've taken 2 10 gauge lines, jumped them on my main battery. It comes up under in here. I've got all this wiring up in here. And then when I flip this, it will take this and jump. This one would be battery 2, so it's jumping this battery here. When I click to battery 3, it jumps off of this battery, and then it will charge that front battery as well. So when I use this, this is always in gear and always running, okay? And I can monitor my voltage from my depth sounder. And then I can come back here, and also when I'm putting this guy in gear and it's running like 13.9 or 14.0 for voltage, that's when I know I can come back here and flip those 2 up, and this battery here from my engine will send charges to jump this battery and jump that. So this battery, in theory, my trolling motor, in theory, will never die, because this is staying constantly charged the entire day that I'm trolling with my big motor. So where this advantage would be, let's say if I take a trip to Leadington and I spend a couple days up there, instead of dragging out and every night charging this up with an onboard charger, worrying about where I'm going to plug it in and worrying about cords laying around, I just flip these up as we're out all day, and they're all charged the next day, ready to go. So this I installed a couple years back, and it's been a lifesaver. I'm really glad I did that. So, and 10 gauge seems to be heavy enough. I do have fuses on both ends in case something weird happens. Obviously, you see the fuses in here, and it looks like a crazy mess, but there's a science to what I'm doing here. This I'm really proud of doing. This took me, this was a winter project 2 years ago. And I'd spend a couple hours a day and, after work during the winter and put all these things in. So the nice thing is it gives me voltage of my batteries as well. So right now it says my front battery voltage is 12.9. Battery number 2 back here looks to be 13.2. So when I plug this in to my onboard charger, it's going to tell me what my voltage is on these batteries. So this is battery 3, battery 2, and then that's battery 1's voltage back there. So when this thing's going out there and I flip this up, you can instantly see it go from like 12.9 to 13.5, 13.6. So that's when I know that the big engine is charging the other 2 batteries. So that concludes talking about this. What I did want to point out, these gunnels, when I first bought this, had basically like a 1x4 and only went down to about here. So I have went in and I have beefed up these sides along these gunnels big time. I put a lot of 1x6 in here, 1x8 along the starboard side. And you can see how I have everything buttoned up underneath here. That's looking up. So if you're mounting stuff along your gunnels, make sure, especially if you're using 12-pound balls, that you beef up your gunnels, okay? Because there's a lot of flex, and you do not want this boat falling apart. So I've had a few guys ask me what I did, and now you can kind of see I've just got a lot of just pieces put together, and then you see that they're fastened all up in here. And then this is looking back. Can't point a reference here. And I basically did the same thing on the port side as well. 1x6 along the top, 1x6 on the bottom. Beefed everything up, connected all the pieces. So make sure you beef up your gunnels, fellas and ladies, on your boats. I've had a few people ask me, what do we have for floor? This is all carpet. We did a carpet video. We had new carpet put in the winter of December of 24 is when we had the carpet. So it lasted me however many years, 20, 22, 23 years, new carpeting. This is carpet here. And then I did opt for vinyl back here, okay? So this is where all the action happens, the blood, everything, slime. And I just use a brush, water, and get it all down in the splash wheel and it goes out. But then I had the conundrum of how are we going to take pictures with scummy fish and bleeding fish and whatever. So went to Menards, bought this rug and basically cut it, and I'll lay it down here and show you how it fits. Okay, this is that rug I was talking about. So I purchased this rug for like 30 bucks. Measured it out, cut it, put the hole in there for that base and that seat. Cut it so that it lays flat because you don't want this causing a tripping hazard, okay? And really anything you're doing in your boat could be a tripping hazard. So you gotta make sure your deck is clean. But we can lay this down and take multiple photos, you know, without getting the brand new carpet all messed up. So that was my solution to avoiding blood and slime on the carpet, was to put this rug in, and it fits really good. And when Max and I had it the other day, we didn't cut it yet, and so since we cut it, it lays nice and flat now and should not be a problem as far as tripping. So this is looking back from the bow, and you can see how we have all that open space right there for reeling, for operating the rods, and it's really nice. And so all of the gear, the salmon gear, our tackle bags, and sometimes a cooler will go here, like I said, right here. And this mount is where my Osmo or my cameras go in this area, and then it gets plugged up there. So all the bulk of the stuff goes up here, and you try to keep all this back here clean. And I'm still trying to plug my live wells because I want to use my live wells as a cooler, because having that cooler up front does take up a lot of room. So I'm trying to figure out how to plug every little tiny orifice here to keep it from leaking. I can put ice back here without it melting, because you 70-degree water in there, it melts that ice. So one last scan through so everybody can see how this is all set up. That's at old Scotty's where I put a cup holder in. Got the track system, downriggers, more rod holders there. And then this is scanning to the port side. And I didn't talk about, but there's a fuse panel up under here, and I do have some charging ports to keep everything so I'm not messing around with batteries. And I also charged my camera. I'll have the camera I'm filming from now will be under here charged the whole time, so I'm not worried about changing out batteries, because changing out batteries is kind of a pain. And then this is a little hatch that has little buckets in case someone needs to use a bucket, or we're using buckets in the back. So kind of gives you an idea what's down there. But that's it. That's our boat. That's our setup in a nutshell. This has taken us basically 20 years. Since '05 is when I started fishing out here. And this is a 20-year process setup, because I didn't have a lot of money to start with. It's not like I went out and had 20 grand to spend to deck this thing out. And also the design, we almost had to, go out and experience the lake and see how we wanted to do it to design it differently than what we had started. So if I could point things out, these track systems are fantastic. and it's not too far back from the helm, and it's not too far back where you're constantly going back here and moving stuff. So all this is really walking. I can walk to this and I can walk to this. Okay, so it's all easy to get to. Pull it right out of the rod holder. I'm not tripping over anything. So you got to make sure that this deck stays clean and organized so you can operate your equipment in such a small boat. So I did want to conclude with talking about my engine here. I got this engine in 2021 from Calumet Marine in Calumet City, Illinois, from Frank Martin. And I had, so this is a 2001, like I mentioned, 2001 boat. The engine I had was a 2000 Yamaha 100, when the original 4-strokes they first started making. It was a carbureted engine. So in 2021, I decided to upgrade. I did sell that to somebody. Someone bought that in 2021, and then I went with Frank and went with Honda. So, and I've been tickled. All of our vehicles are Honda. I have a lot of history with Honda. I did like my Yamaha. Yamahas make a good engine as well. So do Suzuki's. I've been tickled with this thing. So this is basically on a 90 horsepower frame. What the difference is, they've tweaked the computer, and then they also require that this engine burns at least 91 octane. Okay, so when you see me filling up, sometimes I'll put a B-roll in where I'm at the gas station. You see me punching in 93. That's because they have 89. But this needs to burn a 91 or better octane to get the 100 horses out of it. Otherwise, it's not running 100. So I've been tickled with this thing. It's been a good engine so far. I got, since 2021, I've got about 520 hours on it already. And this is my main engine. So people have asked me, why don't I have a kicker? Most of the time I'm on a buddy system out there. Okay, so if I'm going offshore, I know people out there. I can call someone on the radio. I've called the Coast Guard before to get towed before when I was close to shore. I'm not out there in freezing conditions. I only go out on good days. So the kicker would be nice. It would take hours off the main engine, but this is a Honda. I could put 3,000 or 4,000 hours on this thing and it's still going to be ticking. And I also didn't want to put a kicker motor back here and then have no place to net fish either. So that would cause an issue. And then also the added weight. I've got so much weight in here with all this equipment. You know, the salmon equipment and rods and people. I didn't want to add another 50, 100 pounds of weight on that back transom and then it sink even lower and have water leaking from the splash well holes. So that's another reason I don't have a kicker. And then the kickers, we do filming, and then they're just noisy. You know, they're running a higher RPM, they're a little bit noisier than this thing running at 1,500 RPMs. You can barely hear it. That's the final reason I don't have a kicker back here. So, kickers are good to have, don't get me wrong, and if you have a big boat, you should certainly have one. Take the hours off your engine. But what we're doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing, that's why I don't have a kicker. It's not because I'm cheap. It's because the added stuff I just talked about. So that's the rundown of the boat in a nutshell. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you guys want to see our salmon content, we do have playlists on our channel. We're also considering maybe selling merch in the future. My cousin has a shop in Francisville, Indiana. He does does merchandise for local schools, and he did some merchandise for me. If you guys are interested in getting a hat or a sweatshirt, drop a line in the comment. And if we get enough interest with that, we might start, selling merchandise. So thanks for coming. Thanks for coming and checking this out. I've had a lot of questions about it. Hopefully you guys have gotten some ideas, and gals have gotten some ideas for your boat on how to set up your boat for salmon fishing on the big water. So thanks for coming along. Thank you for watching our videos. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next video.